Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. We have quorum and it's 3:01, so we're going to roll. Welcome to WAMPO for Tuesday, December 12th, 2023 at 3 p.m. We are going to go ahead and jump right into the agenda. The first item is the approval of the TPP agenda for December 12th, 2023. I will say that our first action item, the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, the presenters can't be here till 3:30. So the content of the agenda will not change, but the order of the agenda may. So we'll go ahead and jump to discussion updates if we get there before 3:30, which I imagine that we will. So I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda for December 12th, 2023. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the action passes. The next item is approval of the TPP minutes from November 14th, 2023. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Thoroughly enjoy them, I'm sure. Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, Jim. Is there a second? Thank you very much. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Fantastic. Thank you. Next is Chad with the director's report. Please wow us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, members of the Transportation Policy Body. We have a well lined up agenda today, mostly our consulting team members presenting. Some of those want to provide a context for today's meeting. There's an action item on safety, comprehensive safety action plan. And there's also an update on travel demand model. Travel demand model project is also involves congestion management process, identifying congestion locations in the region and also forecasting. But at the moment today, because planning involves forecasting, because federal requirements need forecasting of travel patterns in the region, certain technologies that incorporate MPOs, making sure they update their model periodically. So the consulting firm is going to give an update on that. So that's travel demand model. We also have a regional transit implementation plan. This contract goes until August 2024. Just want to give a heads up on, who is the consulting firm. And then also the consulting firm, Bill Troy's here. He can talk to some of you to understand what are the needs of the region early on so that, by the time August 2024 comes, he has some ideas on how, what to keep in mind for developing those feasibility of regional transit implementation. So those are the three main things that are on the agenda today. And then, of course, Peter has staff employment sectors as a series. So just want to give an overview on today's meeting. Also, I want to take the opportunity to welcome Nick Gregory is new. He's with Maze city manager as an alternate for our previous administrator, Richard Lamagnon. So let's see. So, and then on the director's report, let me go through staff, and I would like to report to you some of the items. The first item is the MTP tip call for projects. You all have seen that jurisdictions are working on submitting their applications by January 5. We know it's holidays and all. We will work with jurisdictions. If any jurisdictions need more time, staff is happy to work with the jurisdictions because of the holidays. Although there's an ample time from September to January, it's always important because this happens every 5 years. So we want to make sure staff work with jurisdictions in the future. But as much as possible, most jurisdictions are pretty good by January 5. So that's that on that. The next item is TIP. Amendment 6, call for projects. This is usual TIP amendment cycles that we have. On the screen, there are some timelines on public comment period, like, call for changes goes on December 15th. And then public comment period goes from January 6th till 21. And then with TAC recommendation happens in January 22. and TPB approval. You were seeking your approval in February. Just an overview on the next changes in the projects for the TIP. TIP is Transportation Improvement Program. Those document 4-year committed projects. Second item, and moving on to the third item, we have a couple of items that staff needed to go back to drawing board and do some homework. That's the two items, that urban area boundary. So this urban area boundary, you were generous approving last TPB meeting because of the timeline. We realized there is some coordination that needs to happen between KDOT and FHW and staff to look at the rationale behind how the urban area boundary is defined. So we're relooking at closely. Very supportive, staff had been very supportive, partnership has been very supportive, KDOT, and we're looking to coordinate with FHW staff as well. So we'll report to you next month again, January, and we hope to, make those fixes for the area boundary and then present to TAC again, and then to TPB again. So that's the status on urban area boundary. There was some good feedback last meeting from Commissioner Dennis and Mayor Bartashri as well. So we are incorporating all those comments and then working on that. Thank you. And then the next item is safe routes to school. That's one area we got excellent feedback from Commissioner Dennis and many of you. Danny can provide you some update on that. Danny, thank you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. So WAMPO staff plans to send out a new Safe Routes to School notice of funding opportunity in January that will include all of the jurisdictions and schools in the WAMPO area. This will give all the schools and jurisdictions another chance to apply for that Safe Routes to School funding. Just like the first round, the jurisdictions and schools will apply jointly. And currently, we're in the process of collecting contact information for all the schools in the region. So if you have contacts for any schools, please send them my way. My email address is on the screen. It's danielle.lasher@wampo.org.
Thank you, Danny. Because the Safe Routes to School plan is happening in 2024, we were just making sure, in 2025, some of the school districts may think, oh my God, we missed the opportunity, So that's why we're requesting, how can we have school districts get connected with WAMPO? And then we are seeking your help. If you think of anything, Danny is the point of contact. And then Danny can also reach out to you so that we embrace and incorporate all school districts into this planning process. So and then Danny, you have next item is yours, Danny, as well. Method.
Oops. The next item is the Method Productions video creation service update. So based on some feedback from KDOT, we decided not to extend the video creation services contract with Method Productions. And right now we're working with them on the videos that are owed from the current contract. And we expect to receive those by the end of 2023. And we'll begin sharing the completed videos on our website and social media once they're available. And then we will go ahead and move on to MTP 2050,
Just
Public Engagement Phase 2.
Question on those videos. Are you looking at maybe revisiting the contract for extension, or what's the thought process there?
Go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The contract, the workload of getting those 2-minute and those short videos for the planning process to place in media like Facebook and Twitter and all, to make the public know the planning process. And that was the intent of this, to develop these. It appears that the work that can be done before December 30 is adequate. That was the reason why before we were being on the safe side, can we extend it just in case that it overflows beyond? But then after talking to KDOT, Danny, and staff coordinating with KDOT, we realized there were many other reasons why it's better to wrap up this year. That's how it happened.
Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny. One last thing, our chair just to share with you this Safe Streets for All grant that WAMPO has won. It's 940,000 from federal portion. And then there will be KDOT also committed certain portion, I forget, it's 10% or 15%. And then some local jurisdictions also have some contributions on the local match as well. So this is a good, it was one of those commitments. Commissioner Dennis was always safety is high priority. All of you were, your leadership was the main reason for that. And also the letters of recommendation, letters of support to Secretary of Transportation was another reason why this grant was won by WAMPO. Any comments, Mick?
You bet I do. I was so excited on Friday. I get an email from Congressman Estes's office congratulating WAMPO for a $940,000 grant. Can I get a woo woo? Very exciting, and thank you to Chad and all of your team, and for everybody on the TAC and the TPB for all your work. But just exciting that, you know, we can move forward, especially with a project focused on safety. So. All right, any questions for Chad or Danny or anyone on the director's report?
I think we have one more thing to talk about, the public
Public
engagement phase
engagement.
2. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Danny.
Yep.
You
So-
excited about the other?
So I just wanted to share with you this graphic that shows where we are at with MTP 2050's development. Right now, we are working on phase 2 of public engagement. That started on December 1st, and it will last until February 29th of 2024. For this round of public engagement, we have rolled out a survey to get input from the public. The link is up there on the screen, and then I have a QR code as well if you want to check it out. This survey will be available through January 31st of 2024. And we're tabling, or so far we have tabled at 3 events at the very beginning of December, and we're seeking more tabling opportunities. So again, if you know of anything, go ahead and send it my way. My email is on the screen. It's danielle.lasher@wampo.org.
Any questions for Danny? All right, thank you very much. We will move into the next phase of the agenda, consent agenda. Sorry, I always forget. 2 items on the consent agenda regarding TPB and TAC meeting dates, and then also K-15 corridor study program. If no one has any discussion, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Stay strong. Any discussion? All right, all those in
I
favor
do-
say aye. You
You
do?
know,
Yes,
one
please.
question. I mean, I'm sure you didn't overlook it, but
I bet I did.
The K-15 corridor, that is the railroad that goes through there is the old route that Amtrak used to use from Oklahoma City, or that one that they're looking at, a new route. So I hope they're keeping that in mind as they do this study.
Great point. Thank you. I saw Commissioner Meitzner somewhere out there. He probably knows about Amtrak better than anyone, right? All right. If no other discussion, we have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye. Anyone opposed? All right, the item does pass. So we will now go to public comment. Is there anyone here from the community that would like to have 3 minutes to make public comments? I don't see anybody. Anybody online? Okay, I'm going to take a point of privilege if I can. Today is Tom Hines' last meeting with us. Oh, you knew I'd do it, Tom. Tom is retiring, and I can say, since I've been on WAMPO, not just on executive committee and vice chair and chair, but before, you've always been very helpful and kind to me. It's truly been wonderful to work with and learn from you. Would you like to say anything?
Thank you. I'm looking forward to retirement and I'll miss this group, kind of. They're long meetings.
Hey, we try and zip through it. We're getting there. We're getting there.
We're
No,
gonna miss
thank
your-
you for your service to our great state of Kansas and for all your commitment to WAMPO. So thank you. We appreciate it very much. Enjoy your retirement. You're my dream job.
We're gonna miss your emails.
For sure. All right, so we cannot quite yet to go to the action items, so we're going to skip around a little bit. And Chad has recommended that the next item that we discuss is the Regional Transit Implementation Plan. And Bill is here. Bill, if you want to go ahead and go next, we would appreciate it.
Okay. Pardon? Okay. Please tell me I'm going the right way. Yeah. Oop, went too far. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Bill Tro and I'm a transportation planner with SRF Consulting, and I'm the project manager for helping all of you folks create the Regional Transit Implementation Plan, which is focusing on the entire Wichita area MPO region. So that would be Wichita and all of the communities within Sedgwick County and those parts of Butler and Sumner County that are falling within the WAMPO region. So what I just wanted to give you a brief overview, since this is my first opportunity to really talk with you, an overview of in the approach for the work that we're doing. I also want to walk through the understanding that we are bringing into the work to essentially, again, understand that, hey, we're at the beginning. Let's make sure we're all on the same page as to what are we starting to work with. And then I'll talk a little bit about the breadth of the concepts that we see are appropriate for a metropolitan area like this, where we have a very dense urban area that has fixed route service, but then some very low density areas within the county that maybe don't have a lot of density with residential, a lot of density with employment, but they have a significant draw to a regional center, in this case of Wichita. And then I'll make sure that I can address any questions that you have. So first, hitting a little bit on the understanding that the map that we're showing here essentially shows all of those communities that we want to make sure that we're addressing, with the understanding that when you're looking at the WAMPO area, you're covering a pretty substantial geographic area. So when you think about the idea that a lot of those trips have an origin or a destination, at least within the city of Wichita, you got to think about trip length and those kinds of things, and that distribution of communities throughout the entire single county plus a little bit of two other county areas creates a few challenges for us from a type of service, from a cost of that service, and things like that. And then as we look at the demographics of each of the communities, we see quite a bit of variety. When you're looking at a Wichita or you're looking at a Derby, you're seeing communities that have a pretty good breadth of services within them, of places for people to live, places for people to get educated, places for people to shop, medical facilities, all of those types of uses. But then when we go to a number of the other communities within the area that have population, have residents, they don't have that whole breadth of services. So we have to consider those as we're thinking of the types of service that are logical in those locations, but then also those that can be supported by the funding formulas that we are considering as we work our way into this work. And many of those communities don't have employment. I can live there, I can't find a job there. I can live there, but I can't do my weekly shopping. I can't do my, the monthly, going to the big box kind of shopping. I can't do that in the community. So that we see that there are some of those services available, but not everything. I've already talked a little bit about that connectivity to Wichita. It's the draw within the region, and it has to be a consideration of all services that we're looking at. And I think the final one there is, in doing studies like this throughout the Midwest, we find that there is a range of what we call is the appetite to provide service. Understanding that providing transit service within a community has a local responsibility, at least in Kansas today, to help fund that service. And we want to make sure that we're considering that variety of appetite as we work our way through the region. We also want to make sure that everybody understands that we're not starting with a blank slate, is that there are other projects and other studies within the region that have been done, are ongoing, that we will make sure that we relate to, we connect to. Some of the important elements here is that SRF has a subconsultant of Nelson Nygaard, and Nelson Nygaard is the prime consultant working on the Wichita Transit redesign project, which is looking at the fixed route network within Wichita. We're a sub to them, so that what we see that as a huge positive in that we're addressing at different levels of detail all of those transportation and transit needs within the entire area. We also want to make sure that we're pointing out is that we've already done investigation of this service that is available within the entire study area, understanding that there are some services that are associated with human services agencies or senior centers, but then there are also more public transit available primarily when we're outside, or I guess it's exclusively when we're outside of Wichita. That is what we call as demand response service. It's you need to make a trip tomorrow, you call today, you tell them where to pick you up, where to drop you off, and the time. And so we've already done a lot of that background work. And as we look at the development of concepts in our work, that we want to make sure that we're looking at where in the region transit of certain types can be supported. When you're looking at fixed route transit, you need a certain level of population density, a certain level of employment density for it to be successful. That level of density is substantially greater than the level of density required for demand response service or service provided exclusively for a senior center or an assisted living facility or a group home. And we want to make sure that we have a good understanding and that we relate that understanding, as each of those is going to be important as we come up with this integrated multi-concept kind of a project or a study here. We also, as we're looking at the service concepts, that we're going to look at areas, the types of service, the hours, the days of service, because there are going to be differences across the region, and that friend there at the bottom of cost. I always kind of half joke at the beginning of these that and I always tell people, don't let my wife hear this, but I say that it's never too early to talk about money. I hate talking about money at home. And so, we want to make sure that we come in early and have that conversation, because I think we all understand it's going to come down to the money as to what we can really do in the future. We can have all of the support for any kind of a concept, but if we can't find the money, we can't move ahead. So real briefly here on our project approach, we're kind of taking this 4 steps and that we're pretty much through that understanding of the areas, of the services that are available. And we're working our way now into developing some service concepts. The last couple of weeks in our office, we've been developing them at a very high level as to, okay, here is kind of our initial menu of types of service that we are going to be including. I'm not going to touch that. And now what we want to start doing is applying those different potential types of service throughout the region where they may be appropriate. We'll evaluate each one with a consistent set of criteria from, well, what is the potential ridership? How appropriate is it? What is it going to cost? What is the level of support within the community for each of those? And then ultimately come up with recommendations, and not only, well, you should do this, 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 and this. We want to make sure we also come up with a timing plan. Because I think you've probably seen in recent studies is that not everybody is ready today to implement an idea. They may not have enough development to support it, but they don't want to kind of like just bail out of the boat and not be considered in the future. So we want to make sure we're looking at timing. Ooh, that was cool. The range of concept. That was cool. I have no idea what I touched, and I won't touch anything else. So our range of concepts, we want to make sure that we're kind of sticking with a core of those things that we know work, but then also stretching a little bit to those things that are maybe a little bit more innovative, particularly in the rural areas. Those things that are car sharing services, the connectivity to the Uber and Lyft that you know, in our business, we always have to put some kind of a moniker on everything. We call them transportation network companies. We don't just call them Uber and Lyft. We have to come up with something else. We want, and there are already those services being used within the communities around Wichita. Let's make sure we're learning off of that information that's being gathered. The concept of microtransit, which is really demand response service, but more timely and generated and accessed through an app as opposed to calling the service to get that element. And in the middle there, we have van pool, carpool, that when you're thinking of a lot of the employers that are starting to come in on the periphery outside those areas that today can support, and even in the future probably can support fixed route transit. Plus, they run 2 shifts, they run 3 shifts. I don't think I have any trouble telling you today is you ain't running no fixed route service in Wichita at 1 o'clock in the morning. And so the idea of looking at van pool, carpool, and possibly even subsidized services within some of those outlying large employers is something that a lot of locations have seen as very successful. It meets the need of what we have. And so we'll be incorporating that into the concepts also. Well, now I really screwed it up. Okay. Look at that. Old guy fixed it. Okay. We also, as part of this work, we're not just looking at the type of service. We're also looking at the ideas of an organizational structure. Go back to the map where I showed all of the range of communities that we have within the region. Okay, one option might be is every one of those guys runs their own service. Well, there is a whole lot then of administrative costs going into that. There's a whole lot of I got mine and I'm going to do mine and I'm not going to worry about the next guy. But then there's a whole lot of inefficiency also. So we want to make sure that while we're considering that element, at least at the beginning, we want to make sure we're looking at various levels of coordination, all the way down to, well, does it make sense for one entity within the entire WAMPO area to provide public transit service? And then each of the member jurisdictions could either opt out if they don't see that they need service. They could buy into the concept. They could be a part of the authority. There's many different permutations of that concept that we can look at. And the idea is to find the right spot along that continuum. It's not this or this, that's a whole continuum that will make sure that we're looking at the alternatives. Our project schedule, that as Chad pointed out at the beginning, is that we will be working through August. And the schedule that we're showing here is each of those segments that we're looking at, from looking at the background stuff to developing alternatives to finally coming up with the plans. And as you look at the various seasons here, you can kind of see, other than at the very right. Yeah, what do you want me to do with that? There we go. That will come up with the plans, and that we have multiple opportunities throughout the study to have public input. We are coordinating with the public input that is being done presently with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, because, you know, we're just confuse everybody if we're going out on a parallel alignment of here is our engagement. But we also have other means that we can incorporate as we work our way through. Okay, I'm ready for any questions.
Any questions for Bill?
Come on. I didn't drive all this way for no questions.
I got a question.
Yes, thank you.
So like the transit survey, does it take in consider, does it ask where residents are as far as communities that they're into? And does it get down to level of knowing exactly within our own individual communities what the
So-
transit needs are?
Yeah, so, okay, as we talked at the beginning about a survey, that WAMPO has done the transportation plan survey very recently. And we thought that it would be again confusing if we just went out and did another survey. So we are taking the information out of the Metropolitan Transportation Plan survey. But then the surveys that we are completing are more based on looking and reaching out to each of the existing providers, whether or not they're a public transportation provider, whether or not they're part of just a senior center, or and we're connecting with them. But then we also have a stakeholders group that is made up of representatives from various communities. And we're also reaching out to them, or have reached out to them, to gather input. And using those two means as trying to understand origins, destinations of services that in the trips that are made. I think, one of the things I want to make sure I point out is, that outside of Sedgwick County Transit, there's not a whole, giant level of transit service within the remainder of the region. That Sedgwick County is the primary provider, and they're operating 6 vehicles, which 6 vehicles in a metro area this size, you're spread pretty thin.
Mr. Truro, thank you for the presentation. Down here.
Okay,
So I certainly understand, and I'm Wichita City Council. So when we talk about transit in this region, Wichita Transit certainly provides the bulk of the service.
yes,
My question, I certainly understand the need for a regional transit implementation plan, but one of the deliverables is establishing a regional transit authority. Is that predetermined? I mean,
No.
are we already decided the outcome here?
no,
And we're just going through this for,
no, I think that's, well, I'm not likely that's misstated. That we will evaluate
Okay.
the feasibility, the reasonableness, the support for a regional transit
Okay.
authority.
thank you. That gives me some comfort because
Okay,
when you talked about the range of organization options, certainly I have questions then about, is Wichita Transit a separate entity, or are they wrapped within that transit authority? And then if it is part of the regional authority, who ultimately is responsible for paying for it? So thank you for clarifying my first question.
Any other questions for Mr. Tro? We did have at council meeting today, Wichita City Council, we had a woman come on public agenda and talk about transit and the need for more transit, especially for Spirit and Textron for, second and third shift workers. So it's definitely on some people's minds. So
and
something.
that's going to be one of our challenges, but we do have ideas that can help there.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for
Okay,
your
thank you.
presentation. Thank you
Yep.
for your partnership. We are going to go back then now to the action item, the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, and we have Aaron and Kendra who are joining us virtually.
Hello, I'm Erin Grushan. I'll introduce myself as we're scrolling backwards through the slides. We also have, in addition to myself and Kendra, we also have Slade, who I believe is there in person, who's going to present some of the information in our presentation today. So I will get things kicked off. Thanks for having us. We recently completed this comprehensive safety action plan. I know we've shared some information with this policy body about the plan development process in the past, but we have now completed it and we want to provide an overview of the planning process and the analysis that went into it and some of the recommendations and next steps. So we can go to the next slide. So Okay, thank you. So the comprehensive safety action plans are aimed at reducing and eliminating serious injury and fatal crashes. This is a data-driven process that really helps prioritize funding for safety improvements across the planning area. An adopted CSAP will also make the region eligible to apply for a Safe Streets and Roads for All implementation grant. So this is a little bit different. I know there was already an announcement, and there will be some more discussion about the demonstration grant, which is really, really exciting news. In addition to demonstration grants, FHWA has implementation grants through the BIL that are out there for, larger dollar amounts to actually implement infrastructure improvements related to safety. So these grants can provide funding to address major road infrastructure issues. And we can go to the next slide. The CSAP was structured around the Safe System approach. So the U.S. Department of Transportation's Safe System approach is a framework that helps agencies to be more intentional about addressing transportation safety. The SSA is based on the concept that fatal and serious injury crash outcomes are preventable, and that the responsibility for traffic safety lies with multiple stakeholders. So roadway designers, car manufacturers, law enforcement, and policymakers. There's 5 key elements of the Safe System approach. They include safe roads, safe road users, safe speeds, safe vehicles, and post-crash care. And layering these together creates redundancy, so that if one of those components fails, then there's others that are in place to prevent severe outcomes. MPOs like WAMPO really have limited ability to influence some of these factors, like safe vehicles, which really resides with the manufacturers. So this plan does focus on the 3 SSA elements of safe roads, safe speeds, and safe road users, specifically the ones that WAMPO can have some influence over. We started out this process, we worked with WAMPO and stakeholders to develop a vision, goal, and targets for the plan. So, the vision, these were rooted in Vision Zero and the Safe System approach principles that I just went through. So they played a pivotal role in guiding the plan development process and emphasizing a commitment to safety at every step. So I'm not going to read this out to you. The vision is shown here on the screen. I will note the goals, though: the reduce conflicts at intersections, create safer roads for all road users, and employ a variety of tactics to reduce vehicle speeds. And I wanted to also note that stakeholder and public engagement activities took place throughout the plan development. This included facilitated meetings with the Transportation Safety Technical Advisors, or TSTA committee. They met, I believe, 3 times in person, and then there was a 4th virtual meeting throughout the development of the plan. And we also had an in-person public open house that the Transportation Safety Committee, now ICT Safe, helped to host, as well as Walk Bike Wichita. In addition to those, WAMPO provided project updates through their website and developed promotional video and social media campaigns to let people know about the plan and how to provide input, and also to provide information about a public survey that we had up to collect information about perceptions of safety from people throughout the region. So I'm going to hand it over to Slade to talk a little bit more about existing conditions and the crash analysis.
And so most of the data we started looking at was really from crash reports that the local law enforcement agencies submit to KDOT. When we started originally, when you do a study like this, a lot of times you want to look at 5 years or at least 5 years worth of data, which is where we started. But then we started looking at the influence of COVID. And if you look at 2020 on, there's kind of a little bit of a difference in some of this data when you start looking at it. So we expanded it out to be a 10-year look. There was also KDOT in 2019 changed the definition of the serious injury. So if you see those in 2019 start creeping up, that also put a little bit more bias in some of the trends and the stuff that were coming on the backside of the data set. So we really wanted to take a deeper look at a lot more crashes to try to normalize this data a little bit. All in all, there were 109,000 roughly crashes that we were looking at over that 10-year period. And I should note that the 2022 data set was not fully complete, and I still don't think it's fully complete at this time. So there's a little bit of an asterisk next to that as well. So when you start looking at these numbers, you can kind of see some differences there, especially in those last 5 years, like I mentioned. But the data trends were kind of on an upswing in a few of the bad areas as well. So serious injury and fatalities, when you take them combined, those really are the focus of our study and the things we want to prevent. And they were kind of on an uptrend. So that was, again, the need for a deeper look. Through the project, we did have a steering committee that we met with, as Aaron mentioned. And in one of those meetings, we discussed quite at length different emphasis areas that we really wanted to attack as a region. Out of that, we came up with, and again, this is just a bar graph of those crashes for injury fatalities in the WAMPO region. Intersection-related crashes were the #1 type of crash that we really wanted to focus in on, majority of the crashes. And because of the interrelation of speed and vulnerable road users with those intersection crashes, they were also as kind of sub-emphasis areas or additional emphasis areas that we wanted to look at altogether. And again, we spent a lot of time discussing different pieces of that, but that was where the committee ended up settling on. And then finally, one of the other big pieces that came out of that same meeting was like why the crashes are happening. And that was kind of one of the focus points that Chad early on challenged the group to kind of come up with, is the why. So we started looking at a lot of the contributing circumstances associated with the crashes. And when we went through them, the real piece that we came away from is around 30% of the crashes come from some sort of inattention. So that's another kind of, if you want to look at the why, there's people that are maybe speeding because they're not paying attention, or they're running a red light because they weren't paying attention to that red light. So that was really what came out of the reports from that perspective as well.
Thanks,
Aaron,
Slade. Oh, sorry. Didn't mean to jump the gun on you there, but yeah, thank you. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about one of the key components of the CSAP is the implementation plan. So this is really, all of the analysis and everything is building up to the implementation plan. What are the strategies and actions that we can take to try to address the safety issues that have been identified? So there are 18 strategies listed within the implementation plan in the CSAP, selected for the emphasis areas that Slade just reviewed of vulnerable road users, intersection-related crashes, and speed-related crashes. Those strategies include information about the desired outcome of implementing the strategy, the responsible party or parties, the time frame for implementation, and the emphasis area or areas that are addressed. And some examples of what's included in there are things that have actually already been completed as part of this, or near completion as part of this process, are a countermeasure toolbox that we've been developing in coordination with WAMPO, and also a Vision Zero toolkit. But then there's actions for the future years around identifying priority countermeasures for the key intersections that are safety concerns in the region. And I'm not going to go through all 18 strategies right now, but just so you can find those easily within the CSAP document itself. And I'm going to talk just for a minute about next steps. Assuming a CSAP approval, we will as I mentioned earlier, that will make WAMPO eligible to go after an SS4A implementation grant in 2024. And so the next steps would be kind of identifying what those what project would be targeted, or projects would be targeted for that implementation grant. And as was already announced earlier in the meeting, the demonstration grant that was just secured is really a great way to help move toward identifying what those are. I'm going to hand it over to Kendra Shank briefly, who is also with BNN, to talk a little bit more about the SS4A demonstration grant that was just secured for the region and how that could potentially feed into an implementation grant application.
Awesome. Thank you, Erin. So yeah, so talking about the demonstration grant. So we applied for a demonstration grant this last cycle. It was due in July, and we just found out last week that WAMPO was awarded. One of the differences, the main differences between a demonstration grant or a planning grant and implementation grant is that the implementation grant requires that the CSAP be approved. So at that time, it was not completed. So we went with the planning and demonstration grant. This grant is for different things. I'll talk about what those are in a few minutes, but the biggest difference in the grants themselves are that the planning and demonstration are more centered around additional studies, additional temporary type improvements. So nothing that's concrete. That's kind of what Federal Highway said was no concrete as part of the demonstration grants. So that's what we were selected for. $940,000 was the grant award amount. And then there's a 20% match for that the local agencies have helped contribute to that. But what that's going to include, or it includes a lot of things that actually came from the CSAP. So we're going to be looking to do some pilot behavioral messaging campaigns related to those emphasis areas of speeding, intersection safety, and vulnerable road users. So thinking about different campaigns, I know that KDOT has some campaigns that they've brought into the WAMPO region, but this way we can kind of make campaigns local to the WAMPO region that also coincide with KDOT. We can look at doing a before and after safety analysis of previously implemented safety countermeasures so that we can help to increase the community support for those countermeasures and understand where we may want to do implementation, what kinds of implementation projects we should be looking at. One of the biggest problems that we saw in the area was the turning radii at some of the intersections, the big, wide, sweeping, channelizing right turn lanes. We can look at putting flex post delineators there and kind of closing those off and making the intersections tighter, which is a benefit for our bicycles and pedestrians on the roadway. One of the really cool things, there's a new alert system that's out there that the law enforcement agencies would like to pilot. And what this does is it gets installed on their light bars of their cars. And so as they are on the side of the road with their light bars activated, it automatically reports their situation to Waze or some other Google Maps type program that puts that dot on the map and tells people that there's police activity or a broken down car or something like that, automatically reports it. So that provides a benefit to them for that. And then finally, working with the city of Andover, they had some interest in doing some additional analysis. And so they've provided some funding for that. So lots happening in that planning and demonstration grant itself. But like I said, just notified on Friday of that award. At this point, we'll have to make some they'll have to go get under agreement with Federal Highway, and then from there it can move forward. And so that process will have to go through competitive solicitation for a consultant and whatnot. So there's still things to work through, but still great news that was awarded.
Kendra, can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
So we're going to apply for the implementation grant in 2024, correct? Or Chad too? Yeah. Is there a dollar amount range that we're aware of? And we just got 940,000, which is amazing for the planning and demonstration grant. Do we have any idea what the implementation grant funding range may be? And then some potential projects, or what would we be looking at funding?
Yeah. I could take the first stab and then Chad, you can fill in. There's no specific requirements for the grant itself. It'll be something that we'll definitely want to work through. And what again, there will be a 20% local match. So that's going to have to be something that we keep in mind for that process. Ideally, I just read a whole laundry list of things that were awarded as part of this demonstration, planning and demonstration grant. I will tell you, that the implementation funds are much, much more competitive. So as right now, what I'm hearing, almost everybody got planning and demonstration money that applied for it. Implementation last year, I think there was 37 projects out of 230 that were awarded. So it's very, very different. And so what we've been working on is really finding those key projects in the region that are cohesive but impactful. And so kind of understanding one of the biggest things is the equity component. So are we improving the community where people are disadvantaged, whether it's low income, whether they don't have access to a car, and we're providing better multimodal connections. And that's not to say several of the grants last time, implementation grants that were awarded, were a series of corridors, but they were all doing kind of the same thing. So in other words, it can't be, in my personal opinion, based on what was awarded, we can't be like, we're going to do a roundabout over here, and we're going to do a trail crossing over here, and we're going to do a railroad improvement over. We need to make it cohesive throughout the region of, we're going to do multimodal improvements on the top 10 routes in the region, just spitballing there on what that might look like. So.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Kendra, is it like 5 million to 20 million range? That other
It's the
regions have?
range, but I think they've even taken that away too in some respects. I haven't seen the official posting yet so they awarded a bunch of grants in October, planning and demonstration, and then they just released some in December. And Chad was notified directly for that, but I haven't seen the official publication from FHWA as to what the implementation grants were. So we will definitely dig into that and see what was awarded this round. Again, just kind of leveraging that for competition and making sure that WAMPO is it can competitively apply for this grant. And that's the one thing that we have to be cognizant of too, is that 230 projects that applied the first round and 37 got awarded. Now there's a bunch more agencies that have a plan. So we're going to have to be even more competitive in that. So that's the thing that we can work through.
And just to help answer our chair's question, weren't those some of the projects like corridor specific, like countermeasures and solutions on certain corridors and so on?
Yes. Yes. So these, for the implementation grant, we will have to have very specific corridors. And it, like I said, it can be a series of corridors. So we could say we want to do this corridor in downtown Wichita, and let's say we're gonna do a roadway reconfiguration to implement bike lanes on this corridor to be able to provide better multimodal access. We could do that in downtown Wichita. We can do that in somewhere in Derby. It doesn't have to all be the same locations, but it has to be kind of that same general principle for all of these. And we can definitely supply more information with the grants that were awarded and talk about how WAMPO may fit into some of that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Kendra, Aaron, or Slade? And sorry, Slade, I didn't mean to miss you before, my bad.
I'll forgive you this.
Any other questions, comments? Good stuff. Again, congratulations to WAMPO for $940,000 for the planning and demonstration grant. So today, before we can apply for the implementation grant, we have to approve the comprehensive safety action plan, correct? All right, so let's do it so we can get some more money coming to Wichita, right? And the region, sorry, Wichita, Sedgwick County and the region. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the comprehensive safety action plan. Is there a motion? Thank you very much, Tom. Appreciate it. Is there a second? Or did you have a? Okay, motion. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good luck, WAMPO. Let's get to work, staff. All right, excellent. So we're going to go back to discussion and updates now. So the second item the next item is the travel demand model. And we have Mike and Paul who are going to present for us today. So thank you for being here.
All right, well, thank you and good afternoon. Yeah, we're going to give a quick update. When I got here today, Tom was telling me I had 5 minutes, so I'm going to try to be brief. But we'll give you a quick update on the travel demand model update. This is Paul Ricotta. He'll be talking specifically about the travel demand model update, which is the kind of the heavy lift item that we've been working on. I'll give briefer updates on the congestion management process, the environmental justice work that we're doing, and we'll kind of make reference to community engagement because that kind of at the direction of WAMPO has been a pretty intentional item that we've incorporated into the project. So I think it's important that we acknowledge that. In terms of project schedule, we're about 3/4 of the way through about a 20-month project schedule. So we're slated to be done in April. Most of the work that's remaining is kind of wrapping up the travel demand model and actually applying the model, whether it's supporting the MTP development, whether it's supporting WAMPO partners in terms of testing transportation scenarios. So that's a lot of what we'll be doing between now and the end of the project. I mentioned stakeholder engagement. So we have been pretty intentional and we've covered stakeholder engagement at a couple of different levels, whether it's working with WAMPO staff, working with some committees that we formed as part of our work on specific tasks, whether it's reaching out to the public, whether it's doing surveys. There's been a lot of different things that we've done as part of the project. And we've also worked on a companion project with Wichita State and the Center for Economic Development and Business Research. So that's also been pretty important in terms of some of the land use and socioeconomic data that we put together for this project. So one of the things, or this slide shows a handful of things that we've done. So certainly more information's out there on the project website. We've developed a project fact sheet. We've intentionally tried to be pretty short so that we can hopefully pique people's interest in terms of education and awareness. And then there's always a place that they can go to find more information. I'm going to touch on a TDM animation here in a minute. We also, at Chad's direction, we presented at the National AMPO conference, which I think was a great opportunity for Chad to be able to talk about what his staff here in Wichita is doing on this project. The next slide kind of shows a 60-second or so video, which I guess in my experience is something that's been a little bit unique. I've never developed a video as part of a travel demand model update project. So I'll play this for you and it's pretty brief. Oops, maybe I'll play it. Do I have to click on it or? Oh, didn't get it. Maybe click there. All righty.
The Wichita Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, otherwise referred to as WAMPO, is updating its travel demand model, or TDM. A travel demand model is a software tool used by planners to provide a picture of existing and future travel in the region and the demand it places on streets, sidewalks, bike paths, and public transportation networks. The model is also used to evaluate which future or proposed transportation projects will serve the needs of the region. The WAMPO TDM includes a 4-step process that helps forecast future transportation system needs, including who's traveling, where to, travel how, and by what route. Understanding what the model can do is important for understanding how it will be integrated into WAMPO's long-range metropolitan transportation plan. Proceed to the next video to learn more.
So that was a short snippet of something that we think will, well, I shouldn't say we think, we know it has driven some people to social media, to the website. So again, we're trying to engage people and get them more actively involved in planning in the Wichita area. One of the things that we did early on in the project was develop the GIS database, like a count database, hundreds of counts, whether it be city, county, KDOT, KTA, all of the various partner agencies are housed in this one easy to access database so that we can build on that and use it as part of the calibration process. So pretty simple thing, but it was something that was very useful in terms of the model work that we did. This slide gives a quick overview of the congestion management process. You can see from the graphic on the right, the congestion management process is a federally mandated process. It's intended to be a systematic process to identify congestion management strategies, evaluate those strategies, measure the performance of those strategies, and then kind of rinse and repeat over a continual basis. So we've worked on that. We've developed a draft plan. Staff is currently reviewing that. So that will be back in front of you, I assume, in some point in the near future. So we'll talk more about it. But one of the things that we really focused on was right sizing it for the Wichita area. There's a lot of, there's a lot of federal guidelines in terms of congestion management that maybe work in, Dallas or Houston or California or New York, but they're not necessarily appropriate for Wichita. So we tried to focus in on things that we felt like were right size for the Wichita region and things that were meaningful here. And the last thing I'll touch on is the environmental justice analysis methodology, which we're really just getting started on. And that again is something that we're working with staff to develop some TDM applications or evaluate the application of strategies that we can use that focus on accessibility of those sensitive populations in terms of access to transit, maybe access to employment or education or healthcare, or even on a broader level, making sure that things like traffic congestion or just transportation projects in general aren't disproportionately impacting those populations. So that's a work in progress, but that's again something else that we'll report back on later in the project. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Paul to condense a whole lot of work into a few minutes.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mike. My name is Paul Ricotta. I work as a sub for Mike here at JEO, and we're the ones that are sort of responsible for this travel demand model update. I think many of you are probably familiar with the use of a travel demand model and why it's good, but I appreciate the opportunity to come here and kind of talk to you very briefly about this and what we've been up to over the last 10 months. And I would have to make a shout out to Chad here to thank him for all his support on this and the trust he's had in us and giving us the leeway to develop the model. And I think we've got a good product here that we can all be proud of and move forward with. So the objective overall was to take the current model, the 2017 base year, and update it to 2022, and also kind of move the model forward. That was sort of the objective here too, to bring it into kind of more post-pandemic realities and capture some of the dynamics that might have changed over the period between 2017 into 2022. We incorporated a little bit more advanced practice techniques into the modeling environment that weren't there before. This allows us to better capture sort of more household level behavior as opposed to more aggregate behavior that most models have typically done in the past. So bringing this up to a more state of the practice type model. We've been utilizing a lot of very interesting data that's kind of on the higher tech side, what we call location-based services data. This is data that comes from cell phone pings and can be used to help verify some of the travel patterns that we observe in the WAMPO area. It's not particularly rich, but it gives us a good flavor of where people are going, what they're doing, how long they're hanging out at these different establishments, whatever there is they're doing. Also using some connected vehicle data. That's what we see, the CV data. So what this is this is data that is derived from navigation systems and things like that in different cars that are equipped with that. We use this data along with the LBS data to augment a lot of the household travel survey data. So we've been using the household travel survey. It's a little on the older side, but it's proven to be very useful. And we've done some things to make sure that that data that's in that survey is still relevant. We've also overhauled the graphical user interface for the model to make WAMPO staff more comfortable with the model and be able to approach it and be able to apply it. And some of these new advanced techniques that we've implemented to make them pretty easy to use. We've also enhanced the peak period resolution. So not only are we doing the PM peak like in the past, we're also looking at the AM period and the PM period, as well as the midday and night times as well. And we incorporated a few other techniques into the model that are have to do with some of the non-home based travel, which is the travel that occurs, say, from a work location for an errand or something like that. So I will add that today we actually had some training with WAMPO staff that we all had a great time at and learned quite a bit about the model, I think. So we're going to continue that process moving forward. I'm not really going to go into too many of the details about the population synthesis or the other destination choice, but we have these slides here. So let's talk a little bit about what we have accomplished here in terms of the model being estimated and so on. So the initial outcome of this model was that it was very well calibrated. So these models are calibrated on a regional level. So we're looking at how we're replicating the not only the travel behavior, but also matching up against some of the observed traffic counts over this time period. And Mike showed you the application that was developed to help us track the traffic counts over time, understand how those counts have been varying and growing, and where the traffic is becoming more pronounced over time. I would just say that the model is working well. I would say that it exceeds the current state of the practice in terms of the calibration level. We're still working on a few of the corridors. Runtime is pretty good, less than about 35 minutes. So that makes it easy for staff to kind of run this model and be able to run different scenarios routinely and quickly. Okay. We seem to be pretty pleased with some of the additions that we added. And if you're really interested in those additions, I can refer you to the slides that were prior to this. The techniques that we've added to this model, these more disaggregate level techniques, seem to have improved the accuracy and we believe advance the model forward. So what we're doing presently right now is kind of working on the future years, developing the project list of what we want to include in them, what we want to look at in the model scenarios, what different projects we want to see, and certainly some of this validation. We're doing some model validation, which is basically testing the model response to different changes to some of the input data. Make sure that the model responds in the way we expect and in a common sense way. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. If you have any pressing questions on some of those technical items, address that. So.
All right, well, thanks, Paul. Yeah, and I kind of touched on this earlier. Most of the remaining effort is going to be focused on using the model, completing the future year model, supporting WAMPO partners in the MTP development and other transportation scenarios. So that's what we'll be doing over the next 3 or 4 months as we wrap the project up. And with that, we'd take any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Mike or Paul?
Thank you for your presentation. Appreciate it. Michael, earlier in your presentation, one of the early slides, and this might be more of a question for WAMPO on the traffic database. Is that publicly accessible? And if so, is it interactive and that we can drill down to individual intersections and get data? I get questions a lot from neighbors and businesses about traffic counts. And if that was something that I had readily available, I could really answer those questions without having to bug staff. And just point those folks into that database if it was publicly accessible.
Yes, yes, council member, we have a GIS access database. At the moment, there are link level, corridor level traffic data counts that were compiled. I will look into it, whether it is intersection level is possible. I think it is possible to have access for public as well. We haven't just uploaded on the website yet. We can do that and then we can share with you that link, council member.
Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions? I do have one, and I'm sorry if everybody knows this of me. My favorite thing in the packet is always on page 33, the acronym definitions, right? That can't make it through the meeting without, but what is LBS? Can you remind me?
Oh, that's what's called location-based services.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a whole industry that's based on this sort of big data approach, and it's all about collecting and aggregating cell phone data and things like that.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. You got another? Yeah,
So
kind of scary.
what is the database that you're using? I know there's like a lot out there, like
Right.
Pacer, I think is one.
So it comes from a number of different sources. The one we're using is actually what our company produces. We use it in these types of projects. A lot of it comes from Wichita or some other companies like that.
Can you track like pedestrian traffic too? And
It's not quite at that level, no. It's mostly it's I suppose if you could somehow tie the device to the person, but it gets into some areas and some gray areas there. Potentially in the future that might be a possibility, but right now it's mostly going to be tied to sort of vehicle movements because the time lapse tends to work better with that. But not to say it couldn't be done.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you for being here today. So next on the agenda is the employment sectors, and we have agriculture, and Peter is going to be joining us. And I always take these back and share them with our economic development team at the city. So, and I know it's also on the website, correct, Peter?
That is
Yep.
correct.
All right, so here we go.
I can. Okay, so some background. We partnered with Center for Economic Development and Business Research to do an economic developmental report that is a companion to our long-range transportation plan. As part of that, they divided up the different employers and industries within inside WAMPO into 7 different sectors. And we've been doing this kind of as part of a series where we go through one sector at our different meetings here. So for this next one, we're going to go over agriculture and just kind of look at the current state and the key players in that industry. I'll try to be quick. I cut down on the slides a little bit, knowing we'd already have a long meeting to begin with. So you can see here are the 7 different sectors and some of the largest employers in there. You can see agriculture is highlighted there with Cargill Meat Solutions and Smithfield Foods being at top. Quick note, the Greater Wichita Partnership created these different sectors. With agriculture, it might not be what you traditionally think food and food processing and things that support the agriculture and food business in general. So you'll see, again, processors like Cargill, Smithfield, along with base agriculture activities. Other things you might see there, you might see Poet on there. They are grain fermenters. They make ethanol. So they were actually put in this group of this sector as well. So major players in the agriculture within WAMPO. I'm hoping 4 of these look quite familiar: Cargill, Smithfield, Highland Dairy, and Dold Foods, which is owned by Hormel. They do literally bring home the bacon for WAMPO, as they do produce bacon there. Oh, thank you. So ICM is a equipment manufacturer in Colwich, because it was the only one I didn't recognize when I went through this list. And they produce stuff that supports the agriculture industry. A lot of dryers, ethanol fermenting equipment, stuff that helps dry grain, things of that nature. And so we made a few maps so you can kind of see the ones highlighted in yellow are 3 of those kind of largest businesses in this sector. You got ICM in Colwich, Dold Foods, Smithfield Foods on the south side of town. Might see some names you recognize. This is one of the smaller sectors for the WAMPO region. It's around about 1,500 employees, and we'll see here on the next slide. But for some context, the largest of the sectors, healthcare in WAMPO, has about 30,000 employees. So if some of these look like small businesses, that's why. And then I did a kind of a zoomed in picture so you can see the other 4 there: Dold Foods, Highland Dairy, Cargill, and Smithfield Foods there in the southwest corner. Just moving through here and kind of where the agriculture employment is by year. Looking through here, peaked in 2018 at about 2,600 employees, and then had, you know, our kind of characteristic drop that's occurred in many sectors into 2020. In particular, in the economic development report, we'll go into this a bit more if you do get a chance to take a look at it. There was a significant drop in a subsector of agriculture for animal processing rendering. Oftentimes I can find a specific business that left when you see a certain drop in a specific place of that many employees, but I couldn't quite get an exact number for it or get an exact employer for that. The Center for Economic Development and Business Research also compiled our peers in all of these different sectors, and I have that here. So you can kind of see how the total agriculture employment in these industries compares to a lot of other cities that were kind of our, as they described them, peers. So we're on par with Tulsa, Oklahoma. I went through and looked because I was curious, looking at our outliers, Omaha, Council Bluff, because they're way up there at 12,000 compared to everyone else. And I couldn't find the exact one industry, but I looked on their Chamber of Commerce and they listed, I guess, a bunch of big manufacturers. They have Of course, Cargill has facilities there. Hormel does have facilities there. Kellogg, Monsanto, and then Claas was or CLAAS was a tractor and a other large agricultural equipment manufacturer there as well. So that's kind of why they have a rather outsized portion on this graph. And then as with the other sectors, I always looked at our kind of our median wage, and then we added a line just to see if it's keeping up with inflation. And we're kind of, since 2015, wages haven't quite kept up with inflation in this. The report again goes into it. A lot of the sector of, or the subsector of employees within agriculture that is generally paid higher, such as your supervisors, your managers, we have a lower proportion of those. We have a lot of frontline workers. That would be, I guess it was classified under first line crop harvesters and things like that. But I wanted to do one more slide here because when I was going through this, it appears almost as if we don't have a lot of agriculture in WAMPO, but I want to ensure you that that's not the case for all of Kansas. And the report generated does go through this. So this is in millions of USD. So this is Kansas's total agricultural exports. So in 2022, that number is correct. It's just under $14 billion worth of exports. And this graph is quite reminiscent of many others where you see a slight decline into 2020 and then a gradual recovery and then greater than recovery into 2022. But again, you know, I got to the end, was like, you know, our university mascot in town is a shock of wheat. Kansas is an agricultural state. It's just, it's not highly concentrated within the WAMPO borders.
Outstanding. Any questions for Peter? Just a fact to bore your friends with, within the city of Wichita, we did a food desert study back in 2013, and then some subsequent studies and 2 economic impact studies of food within Wichita and the Sedgwick County area. And less than 1% of the food consumed in Sedgwick County is grown locally.
Ooh.
Less than 1%. Yeah.
Wow.
So we, when it comes to agriculture, it's not necessarily food we consume, right? It's exactly what you have in your report. So
Yeah.
thank you. Great job. Thank you very much. All right, next on the agenda is our committee and partnership updates. I will just say a few brief words about executive committee. We did meet last week. One of the things that we are doing currently is between now and the end of the year is working on Chad's evaluation, and then Chad is working on his staff's evaluation. So the executive committee will be working on that, and then Dan and I, as chair and vice chair, will pull all of that together and then sit down and have Chad's annual evaluation. The next executive committee meeting is February 1st at 11 o'clock. They are open meetings and we meet right here in the MAPD conference room. So anyone is welcome to join. Kansas Department of Transportation, KDOT. Nick, Tom. One last time, Tom.
I have a local update.
Fantastic.
The North Junction project will continue for at least 2 more years. Sorry. Yeah, there are a lot of bridges to build. There are a lot of railroads to build over and interact with, and it's just a long process. It's a big project. But I think we can all agree that it's much better at the North Junction with the earlier phase of the project where we have northbound 135 traffic going west on southbound 235. So we will get there eventually. And then, of course, we have the East Kellogg project coming soon after that. And then K96 improvements east of I-135 are in the planning stage right now as well. So plenty of work in the future. Plus, every year we have smaller projects that come up, and springtime is coming.
Thank you. I've been saying this consistently for months now, everywhere I go. Between North Junction, K96 expansion, East Kellogg expansion, it's $1 billion worth of infrastructure. Any community region in the state would be thrilled to have one of those, and we have all of them going on at the same time. So orange cones and cranes make me happy. So thank you. Anything you want to add, Nick? Are we good? All right.
Madam Chair, all I heard Tom say was going west is best. That's what I heard.
There's a project in Goddard right now. And there is talk of getting back to West Kellogg eventually.
Thank you. No one from Federal Highway Administration, correct? Under other business, I did ask Pete.
Becky?
Yes.
Yeah, Rick Backlund, I'm here.
Oh, Rick, I'm so sorry. Pardon me.
Yeah, I've been participating virtually in the meeting.
Yes, I'm so sorry. Please, my bad. I did not see that you were there, so we would love to have your updates. Thank you.
Thank you, and sorry, apologies for not being able to be down there today, but happy holidays all. Lots going on, obviously it's been talked about, and I first off want to compliment on the presentations on so many of the initiatives that we as a department are advancing, not just federal highways, but our other modes, federal transit, NHTSA, on safe system approach, et cetera. There's just so many good initiatives that are being advanced. First update I'll give is on personnel. With regard to filling our planner position, we have identified candidates, and we've been going through a recruitment process, and interviews are being started. So that's kind of where we are with that. Chad, with your comment regarding the urban area boundary issues, I know you've been working with KDOT planning folks on that, so we're happy to be in the dialogue as needed. So some key updates, manual and uniform traffic control devices, the MUTC update that was started. It was noticed in the Federal Register the previous year and a half. I think it's been that long. We received over 26,000 comments. I am anticipating that we will have a key update on that new document soon. I can't really give you a date at this time, but I would say sooner than later. A big focus and this document, for those that are not that familiar, this is the manual that states and localities use for their signing. In this meeting, we've had a lot of discussion in previous meetings about complete streets, traffic calming, other measures, safety improvement measures. I would anticipate in this MUTCD update, we're going to see a big focus on local signing and complete streets. That's been a huge focus of our department, and so definitely I say to stay tuned on this, because I think there's going to be a lot of good signing practices that will come out of this document. It's been a long work in progress, but I think it's really going to be a key tool to have and use as we move forward. Lots of discretionary grant good information, as I know has been discussed earlier in this meeting, and much more to come. We continue to reach out through ourselves, along with KDOT, tribal nations and locals, and the MPOs to get the word out on a lot of these, and so much more to come. One comment I would make on discretionary grants is just to remind that whenever a locality does receive a grant, they are subject to all federal requirements, which includes the NEPA process. And it's very important that when you receive a grant to read the fine print, and especially attend those webinars before you decide to apply, so that there is no surprise that when you actually receive the money, you also have all the requirements to go with it. It's not just, a check. And I think overall you all know that, but I think we've had some examples around the country where folks are suddenly surprised. 2 weeks back, we had a key conference in the region on motor carrier with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, and it's to talk about safety for trucking companies, motor carriers. And one item, I was actually on a panel talking about discretionary grants with the Executive Director of Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. One thing I wanted to bring up, something as a suggested focus as we have discussions, is on truck parking. It's a national issue. Having enough adequate truck parking, a lot of times it's not very politically tenable to build more of these locations, but given our requirements for rest and for safe driving, it's really important. And this came out in the conference 2 weeks back, that it's a national issue. There's a lot of work going on to try to find innovative approaches to advance this. So it's just something I might put on the plate to consider, given the size of WAMPO and all the key crossroads that the region has. That's what I have. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Rick? Thank you for the tips about the grants and also truck parking. I hadn't thought about that. So any questions? Thank you for your great comments and updates. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you all.
Next is other business, and I asked if Pete maybe would just give a quick update on Amtrak. I appreciate it. And I warned him, so I didn't put him on the spot like I did Tom.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yeah, for all of you that have been watching and supporting on this item, the corridor ID, FRA awarded like 60 corridor ID projects out of hundreds that were submitted. We were one of the ones, and the corridor ID authorization and approval is, in my opinion, is more important than that. With it comes all 60 of them got a $500,000 grant to finish and update their service development plan. So fortunately, if Corey was available and on, or you guys know, when we make this updated service development plan should be finished by the end of first quarter this year. They've got a head start on it. KDOT felt comfortable that we were going to win this, so they engaged the previous service development plan group that did the study back in 2011. So we've got a jump start on it. I think KDOT and is meeting with Amtrak and FRA shortly to try to determine maybe where we sit in the pecking order for final approval and some other guidelines. So the service development plan will include a more realistic capital costs on what sections need siding. That includes station improvements. And then the schedule, which is kind of set. And then it'll also include ridership, revenue from ridership estimates. Amtrak's much smarter than they were 10 years ago about what they think the ridership will be, and the associated ridership and the costs. So if there's any gap. And don't forget, we will be submitting that as I wish I had the exact numbers, but if you recall, we had presentations from Corey, the first 1 or 2 years, there's no, if there's a gap between revenue and cost, there's no responsibility for Oklahoma and Kansas. And then year 3, 4, 5, 6, it graduates down. I think it was 80, 70, 60, 40, something like that. So it's like 7 years before it would, and Amtrak, again, just conversation recently, they think that it's, they feel confident that it's going to be pretty neutral on that. And again, then the partnership between KDOT and ODOT, possibly TxDOT, the splits and responsibilities of the, I think the capital cost is a 20% participation combined. So that's still to be determined. So I would just maybe suggest we get with Corey Davis at KDOT of what, if he would want to update us in January, February, or maybe wait till March when it's really kind of fully cooked and ready to present. So it's a great win for all those reasons we've talked about before. And the win is as important or more important than if we didn't have the corridor ID approved, we wouldn't be able to do this. You have to be approved by FRA even to do it. So that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you for the updates. Great news. And you'll get something maybe coordinated with Corey at KDOT for March. It sounds like is the best time. Okay. Fantastic. Our next meeting will be January 9th of 2024. Hard to believe we're already into the next year. With that, thank you everyone for being here today. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your updates. I think Chad has one more thing.
Oh, WAMPO wants to thank you for your leadership, and WAMPO wishes you Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Yes, thank you for the
And
treat.
can I thank Mayor Kessler for everybody's got their gift. Is that you, dear? Merry Christmas, everybody. Thank
Yes,
you.
happy holidays to everyone, and thank you for your participation. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Wow. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. everybody who doesn't want to leave, say bye. Have a great day.